Why yesterday?
That's a good question, and I think for the Browns, the two of the last three games, you had the Steelers game and the Chargers game that really were kind of ugly performances. And for this team, it's such a young team, and while we all know it's been brutal the last couple of years, they've showed some signs of life. And I think when John Dorsey and Jimmy and Dee Haslam sat down and looked at everything, I think they realized that a change had to be made. And they obviously, with it both being head coach Hugh Jackson and offensive coordinator Todd Haley, I think they felt that the environment that was being created was not the right one for Baker Mayfield, who is the franchise, or the rest of this young team. And so you heard talks yesterday about internal discord, and I think they just wanted to make sure this is an organization that is functioning. I mean, I've been there 6 years. I have seen regimes come and go. I've seen infighting in the past, and I think with John Dorsey there, along with the Haslams, now they said no more of this. We're not having it anymore. It's time for a change. And I will say, I think Hugh Jackson, in many ways, was dealt a very unfair hand, at least in his first 2 years, where he finished 1-31. And I think that albatross, whether it was just or not, was too big for the fan base and too big for the team. And so when you had that on top of what was going on in the building with Hugh and Todd Haley, I think they just said, you know what, it's enough. The priority number one is developing Baker Mayfield and this young team, and we need to put them in the best environment possible going forward.
But you have these two coaches take a selfish approach here, Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley. Nate, if I knew that Todd Haley was going to be combustible and not going to work out, they had to know inside, even though he's a great offensive mind and you're bringing him in to help Baker Mayfield, you also have to have two guys who get along. When did this relationship get fractured, or was it ever a relationship?
I think that's a million-dollar question, Dan, and I would say that in this business, as you well know, being around so many people in the NFL and even in your business in broadcasting, there are so many egos involved. And Hugh Jackson made it to the point that he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns by being the NFL's Assistant Coach of the Year as an offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals back in 2015. Todd Haley has presided over the number 2 offense in the NFL for the last 6 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I would imagine both of those guys would think, hey, I know how to do this as well as anybody on the planet. And I think that setup, was difficult. For Hugh, last year he had so much on his plate. He was the head coach, he was the offensive coordinator, and he was trying to handhold Deshaun Kaiser, who was not ready to play through an entire season. And I think this year they thought it would be a good idea to take some things off the plate. But you could see, I think, from the beginning and even on Hard Knocks that, this might be a tough relationship to have go smoothly unless there's, without question, success. And I think when things started to go badly, and I think the last 3 weeks we certainly saw the offense regress. In fact, last week, you go into the middle of the fourth quarter with -1 yards of offense in the second half. And the comments Hugh made following the Tampa Bay game where he said he was going to get involved, which were born out of frustration, I think at that point you knew something had to give. And yesterday, being in the building in Berea, I ran into Hugh, who I would consider a friend of mine, and, I felt awful for him. But we were on the air doing Cleveland Browns Daily at about 1:07 when the first report came out about Todd Haley. So yesterday I was kind of shocked. I thought it might be an either-or, and they're going to bring one person out and try to go forward. But John Dorsey and the Haslam said, nope, we've had enough, and both guys were out yesterday.
How attractive is this job?
It should be very attractive. I think that anybody, who would look at the recent history of the Browns and coaches and say to themselves, man, this, seems like a job destined for failure. But I think if you take a step back, you've got a great football leader now in John Dorsey, and you've got a great young roster. You think about the most important positions in sports. You've got your young quarterback in Baker Mayfield. You've got arguably the best young pass rusher in the league in Myles Garrett, who just set a franchise record for the most sacks through 8 games of a year. Denzel Ward is your young lockdown corner who has looked great out of Ohio State. He's the 4th pick overall. Everywhere you look on this team, it's first- and second-year players, very few guys even into their 5th or 6th season. So you have a young roster with a lot of talent on it. David Njoku's an ascending player. Larry Ogunjobi's having a great year for you up front. Jabril Peppers is coming into his own. So everywhere you look, you have a very talented young roster that is going to be together, the nucleus of which will be together for at least 3 or 4 more years, and you'd obviously like to extend those guys beyond that. So I do think it's an attractive job. I think they're going to need somebody who can come in and be so discipline-oriented and focused on all the details. And really the most important thing, I think, ultimately is you need to bring somebody in here who is the right guy for Baker Mayfield. I think you would agree we're seeing an absolute shift in the way offenses are run in the National Football League, and it started with Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Matt Nagy now in Chicago, what Carmichael is doing with Sean Payton down in New Orleans. That's the future of the NFL, and I think it will be important for the Browns to get somebody that can put Baker Mayfield, who is an ideal quarterback for that style offense, into that kind of a system going forward.
Should be mentioned that Nathan was suspended. For how many games were you suspended for?
That would be 8 games, 2 left. I will be back on the sidelines for the Cincinnati Bengals game following Thanksgiving, and for that, I will, in fact, be thankful.
And you were suspended because?
I questioned the veracity of a call on the sidelines, and I would say this. I let my passion for this team, and you know it's been very hard, and you know I'm a passionate person, Dan. I let my passion for the team get the best of my judgment, and now I am doing the time for the crime.
What can't they just flag you? Why? Who suspended you?
I think that would have been worse. I think if I had gotten flagged, I think that might have been a heck of a lot worse.
And who suspended you? The NFL?
The Browns.
Oh, okay. Do you think the NFL told the Browns to suspend you?
I am not in any position to comment on this.
I don't want you to get in more trouble.
Yeah, please, Dan, please.
Good to talk to you, Nathan.
Great talking with you guys as well, and love the front row, gentlemen.
All
Enjoy.
Right. Nathan Zegura.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.